what I think you have to remember is that in the early 90s, I'm from London, Cornelius Cardew, who in some ways the name of this orchestra was taken from, was a fairly marginal and forgotten figure in British musical life, and one heard stories about this charismatic guy that did all this weird shit in the 60s and 70s. But music wasn't played and music wasn't known, and there are a few ageing musicians and composers who were part of his circle but were sort of scattered and were part of this sort of legendary, shady organisation called the Scratch Orchestra. In the mid-90s, when I did my first degree, I studied at a now defunct, everything ends, doesn't it, in art? We always speak about it in the past tense. I was at this defunct arts college, very experimental arts college in West Yorkshire, in the middle of the countryside, called Bretton Hall. And Bretton Hall was based in a 18th century overlord's mansion in 500 acres of capability brown parkland. It was like going to college in Downton Abbey, if you will, without the upper class people involved. And as part of this, I became involved in a thing called the Cornelius Cardew Ensemble, putting this thing together. And the idea of this ensemble, it wasn't my idea, was to play a lot of this music and all of these things. So at that time, fairly surreptitiously, I met all of these people that were involved in the Scratch Orchestra and all these people that were involved with Cardew in quite quick succession. One of the guys was called Eddie Prévost, who is a drummer, a percussionist, and a part-time, well, sometime member of a thing called AMM, which was another whole story. Eddie, at the time I met him, wrote a book called No Sound is Innocent, and basically it was an attempt to think about the social, the social aspects of improvised music making, and in a fairly, put across in a fairly belligerent way, actually. The title itself has a sort of a political sloganeering sort of style to it, and the book is very much like that, and bespeaks of a way of making music which is well, there to have social function, but also to as a means of communicating, really. And the idea of no sound is innocent is really that. If we are improvising, then every single sound could have, could carry weight, and that sounds are fairly sharp objects in a way. Later on, in the late 90s, Eddie ran a music workshop, which is a bit like a small little Scratch Orchestra thing in Waterloo, in London. Just after, and he was dead by the time as well, just after a guy called John Stevens, who was another fantastic drummer and workshop community music leader in London, had a similar sort of workshop. But that's another whole story as well. There's another great book called Search and Reflect, and those people here that haven't read that book yet really should do, because John Stevens, yeah, well done. John Stevens is another name that you should really know about. But yes, the idea of the piece was somehow to encapsulate this. It had that sort of sloganeering aspect to it. You then nicked it for your exhibition, which is fantastic as well. Great, it makes a good title for all sorts of things. Enjoy. I don't know what it's going to sound like, but there you go.